Welcome back to This Is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Commander Tough rules and cool interactions, episode 152. Today's episode is going to take a look at a change to a nearly 15-year-old rule in Magic that will be going into place with the release of the upcoming Magic Foundation set. Wizards of the Coast recently released their article talking about the returning mechanics in the Foundation set, but then, down at the bottom of the article, is a section about the removal of the damage assignment order that happens during combat. For most players, this didn't come up all that often, and they'll probably never even notice this change. But this is actually something that will have a pretty large impact for a lot of decks built around combat tricks, damage modifiers, damage spells, and more. So let's jump into how things are currently, how things will be different once Foundations is out, and then some scenarios that will play out very differently due to this change. And for those of you wanting to read the article yourself, I'll provide a link to it in the video's description down below. We will take a look at multiple rules in the comprehensive rules in section 509 to see the current system at work, starting with CR 509.2 that says, for each attacking creature that's become blocked, the active player announces that creature's damage assignment order, which consists of the creatures blocking it in an order of that player's choice. During the combat damage step, an attacking creature can't assign combat damage to a creature that's blocking it unless each creature ahead of that blocking creature in its order is assigned lethal damage. This is a turn-based action, doesn't use the stack. So then we get to CR 509.3, which has very similar wording to that, but it's for each blocking creature to assign their order. And then in CR 509.4, we can see that the active player gets priority, and of course, once they pass priority, it goes around the table to the other players, giving each player a chance to respond with any combat tricks or protection spells. And then in CR 510, we get to the parts of the actual combat damage step, specifically 510.1, that says the active player announces how each attacking creature assigns its combat damage, then the defending player announces how each blocking creature assigns its combat damage. And then finally, in 510.2, all combat damage that's been assigned is dealt simultaneously. This turn-based action doesn't use the stack. No player has the chance to cast spells or activate abilities between the time combat damage is assigned and the time it is dealt. So, what does this practically mean? What does this actually mean in a game? So, I attack you with my 5/5 Avenger of Zendikar, and you control a 3/3 and a 4/4. And you want to double block, ensuring that my Avenger dies in combat. But I, as the attacker, must make the decision of which of your creatures will be in the front of the other, and this order is in such a way that the creature in the first position must be assigned lethal damage before any remaining damage can be assigned to the second creature. So I, as the attacker, could choose to have your 3/3 be killed first, and then I would deal 2 remaining damage to your 4/4, leaving it alive, or I could order it so that your 4/4 is to be killed first, and then the remaining 1 damage to go to your 3/3, leaving it alive. You, as the defending player, are eventually going to be given priority before we actually go to damage, which means that you can see how I plan to order the damage. You can see that order that I have assigned it, and then you can use that information to do some tricks. Let's say I order it so that your 3/3 is first to die and your 4/4 would be living, because I really dislike your 3/3, and I want it gone. And I'm okay with your 4/4 sticking around. Well, maybe you like them both to stick around, and so you use a giant growth to buff your 3/3 into being a 6/6, and now both of them will be alive through combat. Now, under this new system from Foundations, the active player no longer assigns the blockers in the order that they would plan to deal their damage to first. So if you have a combat trick to save a specific creature, you, as the defending player, have to make that decision at a less beneficial time for you you have to pick which creature gets the +3 toughness from a giant growth, or indestructibility from a blacksmith skill. And then, when we actually get to assigning damage, I can just assign the lethal damage to the creature that you didn't buff, that you didn't protect. But now, for the most interesting aspect of this change, we will no longer have to assign lethal damage to creatures in order to assign the rest of the damage to other creatures. What does this mean practically? Similar scenario as before, I attack with a 5/5, but this time my attacker is a Noxious Gearhulk with Menace. So if it's blocked, then it must be blocked by 2 or more creatures. You still have your 3/3 and your 4/4, and you still really want to keep your 3/3 around, more so than your 4/4. So you assign them as blockers, and since now you have to use your giant growth before you know where I'm going to send the damage around, you have to assume that I'm going to plan on killing your 3/3 rather than your 4/4, and so you use your giant growth to buff the 3/3 to now a 6/6. But now, I, as the attacker, have a plan. I can assign 4 of his 5 power to your now buffed 6/6, and then the remaining 1 to your 4/4, leaving both of them alive after combat damage is actually going to be dealt. Something I couldn't do before under the current rules when I had to assign lethal damage to the front creature. And then, after combat, I cast an Anger of the Gods, dealing 3 damage to all creatures, marking a total of 7 damage on your now buffed 6/6 and 4 damage on your 4/4, killing them both. In decks that use a lot of these sorts of mass damage spells, combat can become a lot trickier, and vice versa. For decks that do a lot of attacking, they just might actually now want to run some more of these one-sided mass damage spells that can be turned into very cheap asymmetrical wipes. One other area that this could be a very big deal in is decks that do a lot of damage doubling, tripling, or other forms of modifying. Similar scenario as before. I'm attacking with a 5-power Menace creature, and you control a 6/6 blocker and a 4/4 blocker. But this time, I also control a card like Gratuitous Violence that has a replacement effect that says, if a creature you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. With the current rules, I would have to order the creatures as to which was the front blocker, your 6/6 or your 4/4, and then when we get to the damage assignment, I would have to assign all 5 to the 6/6 if it were the front creature and 0 damage to the 4/4, or I would have to assign all 4 damage to your 4/4 and then the remaining 1 to your 6/6. And the replacement effect would then apply as the actual damage is being dealt, leaving one of your creatures alive in either of those 2 scenarios. But under the new system, I can just assign 3 to your 6/6 and the 2 to your 4/4, and then we go to damage, and my 5/5 will end up killing both of your creatures. This is a really big deal, and damage modifiers like this have just gotten a really big boost in combat. I personally have a Torbaran Thane of Redfell deck, and this new change has given that deck a really big boost in combat. And for those wondering what this change does for Trample, it does not change, really at all. In order for you to assign combat damage to a player who has been blocked, you will still have to assign lethal damage to all the blockers before your trampling attacker can assign any damage to the defending player, as the rules for Trample are still not going to be changing in any way. In summary, the current system allows the defending player a little more information before they have to commit to their combat tricks, but under the upcoming system, the power has now been shifted a bit towards the attacking player by letting them be a little more sneaky during their post-combat damage main phase. So what do you all think of this new change? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Are you ever even going to notice it? Do you have any current decks that would actually really benefit from this change? I'm sure a lot of red players out there are excited. Cards like Pyrohemia and also something like Pestilence just got a whole lot better. Funny enough, this also just made banding a little better in some ways, but that is a discussion for another day. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you have even learned something about the crazy rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.